Thank you. My Polish isn't very good, but I think what she said is, you're now prepared for the closing 6-hour keynote. Yeah? 6 hours? No? 60 minutes. How about that? Yeah. Well, have you enjoyed yourself so far today? Has it been a good conference? Yeah? Let's give the conference organizers a round of applause. Yeah, it's been a very good show. Well, this evening, I want to leave you with some thoughts about where the future of software development is going, and specifically web services. We're going to be talking about web services in here, but we're going to be talking about RESTful web services and a resource-oriented architecture. This is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I run a consultancy in the States called thirstyhead.com, and our focus is on Groovy and Grails, certainly. I write a series of articles for IBM Developer Works. These are absolutely free, Mastering Grails and Practically Groovy. If you Google these articles, you'll get a lot of information about that. But what's nice is Groovy and Grails are an implementation language. I could be writing these articles in Ruby or Java or C# or anything. The things we want to focus on here tonight, this idea of RESTful web services, really transcend any particular language. The language you write it in is just kind of an implementation detail. These are much higher level concepts. So in my book, Groovy Recipes, I have an entire chapter dedicated to using Groovy to making calls, not just RESTful calls, but SOAP calls, XML RPC calls, these kinds of things. In my book, GIS for Web Developers, which is all about how to build your own Google Maps, create an entirely open source Google Maps-like application, finding free data and free command line utilities and free databases and free web services. The examples are all in Java and Groovy, of course. But the important thing is, in this book, GIS for Web Developers, I focus on a set of open web standards put out by the OGC, the Open Geospatial Consortium. This is an organization that predates the W3C. It's older than the World Wide Web Consortium, and they've put out a set of RESTful web services. So this is kind of getting you into the mindset of what we want to start focusing on here. Now, when we're talking web services, I want to first focus on the web portion of that, and then we'll spend the majority of the talk on the services portion of this. But I think there's no better book out there to kind of explain what we're talking about here than this one, Small Pieces Loosely Joined. Have any of you read this, by the way? Any of you read Small Pieces Loosely Joined? No, I just reread it recently. This is not a technology book that's full of semicolons and curly braces. This is a book about the philosophy of the web, the philosophy of the World Wide Web. And this title, Small Pieces Loosely Joined, really kind of describes what we do as web developers. You can pull down a little HTML from here, and a little CSS from here, and some images from here, and MP3 files from there, right? Yeah? All of these different small pieces are pulled together in our browser. And we can talk about it in a kind of abstract sense, or we can start putting some real brand names behind it. I'm not going to write my own credit card processing system. I'm not going to write my own mapping system. Oh, that's a bad example. I did in GIS for Web Developers. But normally I would use PayPal for credit card processing, Google Maps for my mapping needs. Even YouTube, gives you the ability to embed YouTube videos right in the middle of your web page or your blog. So you can see that in this kind of Web 2.0 generation. Web 1.0 was very good. It was the first 10 years of the web, just getting the information out there, getting people used to clicking on the browser and the back button and things like this. And Web 2.0, we're beginning to see a bunch of services pop up that we can begin mixing together in our web pages. So certainly web is an important part of this equation. You know, this is all running over the World Wide Web. It's running over TCP/IP. It's running over HTTP. These are all the core technologies, of course. But it's the service aspect of this that's really changed things. The idea now that being able to provide the data is just as important as being able to provide the web page. You'll know eBay, don't you? eBay, yeah? They run auctions. Yeah? They have both a web page, ebay.com, and they have a set of APIs as well, web services. Any idea how much of eBay's revenue comes through their web services? Over 2/3. Over 66% of their revenue comes not from ebay.com, but from their web services. eBay being cut down to 1/3 of its size would still be a giant company. But imagine being 1/3 of the size, or being able to triple the size of your organization by being able to offer a data set of APIs. When we start looking at the modern, the Web 2.0 darlings, the Facebooks and the Twitters and companies like that, it's a requirement that they provide an API as well as the web page. Less than 15% of Twitter's traffic comes in from Twitter.com. 85% of Twitter's traffic comes in through their web services. So you'll see this is a real phenomenon. This is something that we need to address in our organizations. Now here's a little test. Let me see if I can read your mind for a moment here. I'm concentrating. When I say web services, what do you immediately think of? Soap, don't you? Yeah? I'm not here to knock soap, but show of hands, how many of you are doing soap development in your organization right now? Oh, okay, yeah, some, yeah. Soap is just one implementation of web services. And what we'll find is that SOAP is very much a Web 1.0 kind of technology. SOAP came around in the era of about 1997, 1998, 1999, right around then. So this was our first attempt to deal with web services. It's not the last one. There are plenty of other implementations we're going to talk about in here. But that's really important to not conflate SOAP with web services. That when I'm talking about web services, he must mean SOAP. Bear in mind, this is one implementation, not the only implementation. And it's interesting because Dave Weiner, the creator of SOAP, he wasn't the only creator, of course. He was there at the table with Microsoft and IBM and the rest of the folks. But you see that he has been big in the space. He was the creator of XML RPC and the creator of RSS. We'll talk about that later on. But in an interview on IT Conversations, about 45 minutes into the interview, the interviewer says, "Man, Dave, why do you hate SOAP so much? Why do you go around bad-mouthing SOAP all the time? This is your baby. You created it." And Dave says, no, don't get me wrong. I love SOAP. SOAP was the lawyer of the family. I love that. SOAP was the one that was supposed to bring us all together. We're all supposed to be holding hands and singing Kumbaya together. Yeah. But clearly that didn't happen. Clearly, the magic of SOAP has failed to occur. These are strong words from the inventor of the technology. And what he means by this is this, that there are some technologies we use day in and day out, and it's kind of faded into the woodwork. Quick, what version of HTTP are you using? 1.1 is the answer, but HTTP is a technology that we use. It's ubiquitous, but we aren't constantly faced with what version of HTTP are we using and incompatible versions released by different vendors. Quick, what version of SOAP are you using?